In today's podcast, we will focus on hospitalization at home. With me today, I have Christopher Lee Dahm, Marketing Manager in Qlife and the brand Egoo Health. So Christopher, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, Klaus, and thank you for having me.
Today we are going to talk about some very interesting topics. The first topic we bring to the table is the macro topic, the megatrends. So what megatrends do you see within hospitalization at home?
First of all, we see an increasing population getting older. But when they get older, they don't tend to stay healthy the longer they live. So what we're seeing here is more patients with comorbidities and chronic diseases that needs treatment at the hospital. A lot of this treatment is requiring monitorization after taking care of the acute situation. And we see hospitals trying to figure out a solution of how to send patients in treatment in homes instead of having them inside the hospitals that is actually meant for the acute.
When we talk about engaging the patients or educate the patients, educate the system to cope with this hospitalization at home, what do you see of challenges and how far are we in that process?
Yeah, so what we're seeing from the demand out there from hospital CEOs and doctors is that we want to enable patients to do more themselves. And we need more engagement in their treatment because studies have shown that when patients are more in contact and a part of their treatment, then they actually get healthier faster. Okay. And they stay healthier faster. But this has some requirements. There's some barriers to this. And that is where Egoo comes in, because we need safe and quality diagnostics that can help these patients in the homes. And through telemedicine, the doctors can have the right diagnostic evaluations for these patients so we can get them treated in the right way and in a safe way.
Good, interesting. So could you just briefly describe how is the normal process going on today? And what is your expectations if we look a couple of years down the road?
Yeah. So if we take, for instance, a chronic patient today with COPD, so they have a hard time with their lungs, and they have a high risk of getting lung infections. When their disease is flaring up, they obviously need acute care. So we are transporting them to the hospital. They get antibiotics, they are getting diagnosed, they are getting the necessary treatment to lower the infection level here. But after the acute is taking over, then they stay inside the hospital for 4 to 10 to 14 days, depending on the severeness of this illness. And during that time, they're taking up bed space. The nurses come by every multiple times a day, making sure that you have the right values, the vitals, the blood, the right blood values. But they also serve you food, and they make sure that everything is good around you. Where Egoo Health comes in here is that the last part of the treatment, we can bring quality lab diagnostics that the patients can do themselves. So enabling the patient to do the necessary test in their home, and then through telemedicine can report them at times a day that is planned with the nurses to make sure that everything is as it's supposed to be. So taking all the unnecessary or the high cost of treatment in the hospital, cutting that away because the patient will now be in their home. They have more flexibility to go around wherever they want, and many times they actually like being at home,
of course,
as opposed to be in the hospital.
Of course.
That is because at home it's a place you know, it's a place you feel comfortable, a lot of people feel very uncomfortable in the hospital, not due to the staff not doing what they're supposed to do. They're very professional, but that is just how human behavior is.
Of course, of course. And Christopher brought this small guy to the table. We are going to look at him a little later, and some tests here as well, just to show how this works. But just to finish off the megatrends, you recently signed a deal with Hybro Biotechnologies. You entered into the letter of intent late 2023, and you signed before New Year's Eve. Could you explain just very briefly for the listeners, who is Hybro? What can Hybro bring to the table? And why did they choose you right now?
Yeah, of course. So Hybro sees the same megatrends as we do. Their focus is also home hospitalization, and that's why right now they have a very big analyzer that they can't bring home to the patients and treat them near the patient. But the technology of the two devices are almost the same. Mm-hmm. Ours is just in a miniature, like this lab equipment, and simplified so ordinary patients can do the testing themselves. So obviously it was a great match between the technologies and the companies, and that is why we've entered this agreement. Hybro Biotechnology is a global brand, and they have a lot of resources within R&D and regulatory and production. So we gain access to a lot of qualified staff that can help us speed up the process of developing more biomarkers faster, getting a lower cost of goods sold. And that's why this is a great deal for both of us, because we enable them to enter a new market in China, and they will enable us to speed up our production and launch to the rest of the world.
Interesting.
Meaning actually also that with every new test that we're developing, we are looking into a new disease area. So for instance, CRP, that's for infections, as I mentioned before. Whereas when we develop D-dimer or NT-proBNP, there we're talking about kidney and heart diseases. So we can move a different patient group into the home.
And expand the scope. Good.
Yeah.
Another important topic within your industry, Christopher, is the value chain. And a common used word is disruptor. We heard that a lot of times. So let's use enabler instead. Yeah, and let's start with, how does Egoo fit into hospitals at home?
Definitely. So as I've told before, we see a lot of demand for putting patients in home. At the moment, what we are seeing when hospitals are putting patients into their home is that obviously the nurses need some time to transport back and forth to the patients to do the blood work that needs to be done.
Yes.
This obviously requires a lot of resources. The nurse taking a machine that is a lot bigger than this small little thing, taking it on the back, getting to the patient, saying hi, all the formalities, and then doing the blood work, making sure that the patient is safe and is comfortable, and then doing the otherwise treatment that needs to be done when they're already there. Then after that, going back home and out to the next patients. This is a lot of resources that is spent on home hospitalization. So with Egoo Health system, we can allow the patients and enable them to do their own testing. So the nurses are less needed out in the homes. So we free up a lot of resources for the hospitals by putting the patients in power to do their infection tests themselves, or one of the other tests that will come into the future.
So the nurse coming to your home, she take a blood sample, take a test, measure your
vitals.
Yes, and she bring that back, but not only bring it back, she needs to bring it to a laboratory, and then they measure. And that takes a couple of days or hours?
There's different ways of doing it. It depends on the test. So if we are doing a CRP test, for instance, you have other point of care analyzers out there that is maybe 3 kilos big and this big, that they can bring on the back. They need the test to be cooled, then they can take it out to the patient, but then obviously the patient can't do the test themselves. They'll need to do the test because those equipment is approved for professional staff. So that's a lot of hassle. Other very important tests that is not available at these type of equipment, obviously you would need to bring the sample back into the laboratory. And that's where Egoo system is of great value, both now but also in the future, because our goal is to enable the patient to actually do the test themselves. So we are less dependent on the nurse using their valuable time going back and forth and doing the testing, but also the technology that is in this little device allows us to develop some of the more important tests that you otherwise would need to send to the laboratory.
Very interesting. And this little guy measure different kinds of infections or whatever we call it. We will get back to that in a moment. But does this guy speak directly with the doctor, the nurse, or do you need other equipment, or how do you see the future in the value chain? You mentioned telemedicine.
Obviously, we need some way to make the patient safe.
Yes.
One of these ways that we're seeing out there now is also increased focus on telemedicine platforms where patients and doctors and nurses can connect virtually with video and where the results are also stored. So these type of companies can become great partners for us as well, because we will enable their platform to become more valuable, including blood tests. Otherwise, it's only vitals like blood oxygen levels and blood pressure and temperature and so forth. But we will enable their platform to also be with blood work, which is a major barrier for actually having the patients at home. At the same time, they will also enable us and make our product more valuable because there's an actual face-to-face engagement with these patients when you use a video platform and the ecosystem. Obviously, we've built our software so that we're able to build integrations into different systems, so we can send the data safely with GDPR compliance and anonymous data back and forth.
So you have looked into the future. This is very interesting. And now we have to draw the curtain for this little guy. So please, Christopher, let's see how it works.
Yes. So we've built the connection between an app and our analyzer with Bluetooth.
Yes.
So it's easy setup, 4 simple steps, and then you're connected. I've already done that, so now I'll just press start test.
Yeah.
The phone will ask me to do the following procedure from the instructions for use that follows with the test. With the CRP test, you take a finger prick, drop 1 or 2 drops of blood down here on the Egoo Collect.
Please show that for the camera. So you have a small dispenser here.
Then this indicator will turn red. It's ready now for applying pressure. This will filtrate the plasma from the whole blood into a small capillary. So when this indicator turns green, then you're ready with the patient sample. That you just take out. You have the plasma here. Enter into the capsule, make a click, and then you've delivered the sample. Now the test is ready in a closed off system, ready for analysis. So you press continue on the app, and then the ecosystem will make itself ready, push out the draw.
And this machine is smaller than a Nescafe a coffee machine. It's really a handy small piece of toy.
Then you just scan the QR code that will tell the analyzer what test are we doing. And then you just close the lid. Now this is a demo. It takes a little less time. A CRP test will take 10 minutes. Then you'll have your result. The patient can do this before the planned consultation through video and have all the results ready. So we make sure that they are okay and they're getting better.
So
when the test is done, as the watchers are seeing, then you take out the test capsule, you discard it in a trash can, and then you close the lid, and the result will be shown on the phone.
Could you tell the audience a little about? Now we tested for CRP. This is a demo, of course. We didn't do a real blood sample. But what should you look into in terms of healthy, unhealthy levels? And when should you be aware if you are in an unhealthy situation to contact your doctor?
Definitely. So standard equipment and standard CRP testing will say if you are above 10 milligrams per liter, you should consult with your doctor. Depending on the patient itself and the clinical evaluation that you have, usually between 30 to 40 milligrams per liter, you can be of risk of needing antibiotics.
Okay.
And that is, of course, a clinical evaluation with the doctor, whether or not, because there's also other symptoms you need to incorporate in that evaluation. And of course, as mentioned before, the result from this phone we can send to patient journals or whatever platform we need to build an integration to.
So the last topic we're going to focus on is Qlife and Egoo Health's vision going forward. So Christopher, if you could please take a step-by-step approach for the next 3 to 5 years, what do you look into?
Definitely. So our vision has always been to democratize biomarker data, enabling regular people to do their own blood work. And we see a lot more demand for self-testing, and we see a lot more people doing self-testing as well. But what we also see is we are still not there as population to actually know what to do with the results. So what we in Qlife has set out is a step-by-step approach in order to educate people in what it is that they need to do with their health. And whoever better to do this and help the patients than the hospitals themselves. So that's step one, is collaborating with hospitals, the physicians, the nurses that knows what to do with the blood analysis, know what interventions that the patients need to do in order to get healthy again and live a healthier life in general. But there's also other target segments that can assist with hospital at home, because it's a hospital at home letting the patients doing the blood work themselves is not one size fits all.
No.
We have other entities out there that can assist on this journey. So if, for instance, if we take pharmacies or health practitioners, they have the knowledge as well of analyzing the blood data and assisting the patients. So for instance, in a pharmacy setup, we see the patient coming down to the pharmacy, taking the test. The pharmacy have a direct line to a GP that can take the decision whether or not the patient should have one treatment, let's say antibiotics or not, and the patient can get it right at the counter and go home and have an easier treatment. Instead of going to the GP, then down to the pharmacy, you don't know in rural areas how far these entities are. So this makes it much easier for the patient as well.
Of course.
And there's education with the patient. Slowly building on knowledge on the general public of what blood work is. Same thing goes, as I mentioned, health practitioners. Here we could talk about dietitians or health coaches or physiotherapists, people who also have the necessary knowledge to know how to live an active and healthy lifestyle. Because here we are looking into maybe chronic patients or other kind of clients that want to have an optimal health. So they don't get sick later in life. And here we also see a lot of help from this professional group that can help with doing the testing with the clients and then guide them in what to do. Helping later on at a stage with hospital at home, because we get less patients inside the hospitals because we start preventative healthcare. So this is step 2. And with time, if we look maybe 5 years into the future, maybe a little bit more, the time will tell when people are ready to take care of themselves some more. Then we are looking into direct to consumer, where the ecosystem can be in every person's home and help them live a healthy and active lifestyle with the knowledge of what are their inner values, instead of only having their blood pressure and sleep, how well they slept, but actually finding out how is my body status. And if we talk about chronic patients, they want to live as healthy as possible so they don't get sick. And these people will be able to follow their disease, learn how to live with their disease in the best possible way. Kind of like we see diabetics doing today with taking insulin and measuring their blood glucose. This system will enable a lot more patient groups to actually learn how to live with a chronic disease the best way possible.
So take responsibility for your own health.
Definitely.
So it's a pure win-win, actually. And in this podcast, we touched upon the mega trends, touched upon the value chain, and finally, how does the future looks like. With that said, I would like to say thank you to you, Christopher, for participating in this podcast. Really interesting. And by that said, thanks a lot, and
thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.